Students, once again, welcome to Waidsum University. This is our usual course, Network Session Management, and this is Chapter 5, Part 5, or Chapter 5, Section 5, and the topic for today is the causal ports connection. Now, without much ado, let's begin. Now, we're going to describe the router's causal port connection. Okay? Now, without much ado, let's begin. Now, the router causal port is used as the initial interface to always configure the router. When we have a router, we have to first of all configure all the interfaces in the router before the router can be used. Before the router can be used, we have to configure all the interfaces that are in the router. Okay, all the interfaces that we've described in the previous section of the router, we need to configure them. Now, through which do we configure the router? We configure the router using what we call the router's causal port. Is that okay? So we configure the router using, okay, let's use a highlighter so that we can highlight it when necessary. Okay, so that we can configure the router when necessary. So the causal port is primarily used for configuring the router. Okay, it's an interface that is used to configure the router. Is that okay? Okay. Now let's take a look. Let's move on quickly. We say it's a serial communication. The causal port is a serial communication link. Okay, and it is the only way that we can communicate with the router initially. Okay, it's the only way we can communicate with the router until all the other interfaces of the router has been configured or you have done them. So initially, when you have a router, you buy a router or you get a router from manufacturer from Hawaii, from all the manufacturer of these networking devices. The first and foremost thing we do is to configure the router for the particular network. Okay, now the only way we can configure the router, we can communicate with the router, is through the router causal port. Okay, that's what we mean. It's a serial, it's a 233 serial connection port. Okay, so it's the only way we can send any message or any signal or anything to the router, configure the router to adapt to all the interfaces with through the causal port. Is that okay? So we say the causal connection is an RS-232 serial communication port, and it uses what we call the RJ45 jacks to connect to its interface. Is that okay? So let's move on quickly. Now this is an example of a DB9 and DB25 interface. Now the RS-232 protocol running on the causal port is the same communication protocol format that is running in our computer. So we say COM1, COM2 in our computer ports. However, the connector for the serious communication ports on the computer is usually a DB9 or a DB25. Okay, we're going to describe how we can convert these two interfaces, RS serial port with this. Okay, now the DB25 is the usual one we normally use for this kind of communication connections. Now let's take a look at these figures. You can see this is a causal cable. This is a causal cable with an integrated. You can see in it you have what we call the DB9. The DB9 connector is integrated with this cable, right? Then the second one is a causal cable using an RJ45. Okay, using an RJ45 rollover and a DB9 to the RJ45 adapter. Okay, so it has a DB9 to an RJ45 adapter. So here can be connected to here. Is that okay? So that's the figure you're seeing right away. Now let's take a look at connecting the causal cable. How do we connect the causal cable? To connect the causal cable or to connect the DB9 pin, the DB9 end of the causal cable to any other available communication port like the COM1, COM2, COM3, whatever, Now on the computer, what you need to do is that the router's console input uses you have to note that the router console input uses the RJ45 jack, right? The router itself uses an RJ45 jack, right, with a plug at the end of it, right? And the cable used to connect the RJ45 jack to the computer is called the rollover cable. Okay, an example is the one we just showed just now. Okay, a rollover cable, this one, a rollover cable. Let's go to the previous section. This is a rollover cable. What you see now is a rollover cable. Okay, it's a rollover cable. Now let's go back. So we say the cable that we normally use is called a rollover cable. Now what is a rollover cable? A rollover cable is a flat cable that reverses the signals on each cable from one end of the cable to the other end. So it always reverses the signal. Where, for example, pin 1 goes to pin 8, from pin 1 on end A goes to pin 8 on end B. Then pin 2 on end A go to pin 7 on end B. Pin 3 on end A go to pin 6 on end B. Pin 4 on end A goes to pin 5 on end B. Pin 5 on end A go to pin 4 on end B. Pin 6 on end A goes to pin 3 on end B. Pin 7 on end A go to pin 2 on end B, and pin 8 on end A go to pin 1 on end. So this is what it is. Now let's take a look at it. We have it in a diagram here. So let's take a look at it, what we've just described. Let's take a look at it. Now you see these are the signals, these are the functions. So ready to send, RTS means ready to send. Then the DTR means data. Now you take a look at the RJ cable, RJ45 cable, and A and B. Now you see pin 1 is connected, it goes to pin 2, pin 1 go to pin 8, pin 2 go to pin 7, pin 3 go to pin 6, pin 4. So as this one is increasing, this one is decreasing. That's just the simple logic. So you start from 1, you start from 8. This one increases stepwise, while this one decreases stepwise. Is that okay? That's what it is, in case you don't know what we're talking about. So 1 go to 8, and A and B, same cable, okay, from one end of the cable to the other end. Okay, 1 go to 8, 2 go to 7, 3 go to 6, 4 go to 5, 5 go to 4, 6 go to 3, 7 go to 2, 8 go to 1. Okay, so now these are the functionality. We say for example the RTS, which is ready to send. That's the pin 1 to 8, mean ready to send. Then pin 2 to 7, what it means is that data terminal ready. Data terminal is ready. So that's DTR. Then pin 3 to 3 to 6 is transmit data. 3 to 6 is to transmit the data. Pin 4 to 5 is ground, like earthing, ground. And also 5 to 4, because they are vice versa. They just coincidentally vice versa. Is that okay? So you can see 4 to 5, 5 to 4. They're both ground. Okay. Then we talk about receive data. Receive data, you know, we said 3 to 6 was to transmit data. Then the reverse 6 to 3 will be receive data, right? It's just a common logic. It's just a sequential logic. Is that okay? So you see 3 to 6 was to transmit data. Then 6 to 3 will be to receive data. Then 7 to 2 will be data send ready. Remember 2 to 7 was data terminal ready. Now this one is data send ready. Okay. Then 8 to 1 will be clear to send. This 1 to 8 was ready to send. 8 to 1 is clear to send. Is that okay? So this is the functionality of a rollover cable. This is how a rollover cable operates. This is how it operates. Okay. It's used for connection between the COM. You can even use it for connecting a USB cable with a serial RS-232 port cable. Is that okay? You can use it. Is that okay? So this is how the cable connects. Now let's talk about the hyperterminal of a cursor port in a router. Now, in talking about the hyperterminal is simply a software package that is developed by Microsoft. It's a communication, it's a serial communication software package that is developed by Microsoft to be used for routers. Okay, it's used for establishing communication link to the router's cursor input. That's what it is used for, just to establish communication link to the router cursor input. Remember, we said that the cursor port is the initial place where you can communicate with a router in order to configure all the interfaces before the router can be used. Okay, a router cursor port is the interface where initial communication with a router is established, or a terminal where a router every configuration is done into the router. Okay, so that all the other interface will understand the language and the communication protocols of the network. Okay, so now these are the settings for hyperterminal of a cursor port. The settings for the serial cursor of a Cisco cursor port are provided. First of all, you have to configure the bits to be 9600. The data bit will be 8, the parity none, stop bit 1, flow control is hardware. So these are some of the things you have to impute into through the console to the routers. Okay, in order to first of all establish a connection, a link, so as to enhance or enable the configuring the other interfaces in the router, so that the router can now start will be ready for use in the network. Is that okay? Now let's move on quickly. Now in the software, when you open the software, when you click on the software, then after installing the software, the first thing you do is to enter a name for your connection. The name could be like Cisco router. You can just write Cisco router. Okay, when you're about through the cursor port, when you're just about to configure the router, so you can write here a Cisco router and select any of the icon, any of this icon you see here. So in this case, we are selecting this first icon. Okay, so here we write the name, we say router name on this. So after we've installed the software, you click start or click run, then this interface will open. Then you see new connection. Can you see new connection? You're trying to connect the router to your network. New connection. So you enter the name, you say Cisco router, then you select any icon, you click OK. Have you done that? After clicking OK, the next interface pumps up. Now this interface is connect to. It asks you to connect to where are you connecting this router to. Okay, so you have to specify on your connector menu. Okay, in your connector menu you have to specify where you are connecting this router to. Is that okay? So it will enable you to specify which of the serial connections to the router do you want to make. Okay, so in this case you can see that we are choosing COM2. So we are connecting to COM2. That's what we've done. You select COM2 for this case, for this first configuration, and then you click OK. So you have many various options which you can select from here: COM1, COM2, depending on what you're selecting. But in this case, we're selecting COM2. Is that okay on the interface? Now this is how to use the hyperterminal software. That's what we are saying. Now let's move on. The next interface will pop up after you selected COM2. The next menu is the properties. The next menu that will pop up is the property menu. Now this property menu is showing your COM2 properties, right? Because you've already attacked Okay, sorry for the breaking. Sorry for the breaking transmission. I just have to quickly get something fixed to continue. Okay, so what we're saying here is that you enter the. You remember the original. After this interface comes on, you see after you've done connector and then you select COM2, you click OK. Then this one will pop up. What we call the properties. The property menu will pop up. Now this property menu, this property menu for your serious connection will pop up, right? Now this menu is labeled COM2. COM2 properties is you have already selected COM2, and remember initially you've entered all your data for COM2, right? The bit per second was 9600, the data bit is 8, and then the parity is none, and the stop bit is 1. The flow rate is hardware, and then you click OK, and then we see the next one. This interface will come up. Now once you see this image here pop ups on your screen, it means that your connection has been established. You see this press return. Okay, press return to get started. This one, once it pops up, it means that your router is ready, has been configured through your core support. Your router has been configured to use the software hyperterminal, and we're going to describe the hyperterminal, what kind of software package is used with hyperterminal. So you see here, once this pops up, it means your router is ready. Okay, you press enter to get started. Okay, there you that means your network is so you then you press enter to see if the router resets itself. Okay, so another possible screen you might see may have that the router, if it's not there, you have to click enter in order to see if this does not pop up. You have to click enter and see if the router restarted itself. Okay, so now let's move on quickly. Now let's take a look at the cursor connection to the MAC, to the physical layer, the MAC, media access control. Now let's see how the physical layer uses the arrow, uses all these hardware devices and the MAC addresses in the card in the system. Now the following are the steps that you use in establishing a cursor port via a USB serial connection in Mac computer. Now these are the things if you want to install. You can see this one. This is a USB interface. This side is a USB interface of this connector, while this way is the RS232 main pin side. So you can see these are two interfaces. So if you have this kind of interface, if you want to use it with your computer, because if you want to use it with the computer, you use this type of connector. This is the type of connector we use with computer. Now if you want to use this one with your Mac computer, what do? Now these are the steps you require. So first and foremost, you have to get what we call the serial communication software. You have to get a serious ZTEM. It's called ZTEM. So this ZTEM you can download online. There are free versions of ZTEM. Okay, you download online and you install in your computer. You store a ZTEM in your computer. A ZTEM is a shareware program, okay, for Mac that can be downloaded from anywhere from the internet. Okay, you can download it from the internet. So you get a ZTEM, okay, which is a shareware, so you can easily have access to it. Now you need what we call the USB a 9PDB, okay, to RS232 main serial adapter. You need like this one you see here. So this is a USB 9 pin and to what we call the RS232 main serial adapter, okay, such as the USB pin adapter that you're seeing on this picture. Is that okay? Now let's move on quickly. Then after, the next thing to do is to install the serial communication software and the driver. You also download the driver, not only the software and the software driver. So you download the serial communication software and you download the corresponding driver of the software, okay, to manage the software. Now the next is to start the serial communication software, right? After you've downloaded, you've installed it on your computer and you've installed the driver on your computer. The next is to click on start. There is setting will open on the setting. Once you are on the setting, then you click on what? Click on the modem preferences. You click on the modem preferences, okay, because that's what we want to install, right? Then you go to the next phase. The next phase is that you need to change the serial port so that it's set to what we call the USB. Remember, now we are Because we are using a USB interface, we have to set the serial port to a USB 10 and click OK. Once you set it on USB 10 on your local area network, every other thing here is the information that you've initially entered into your configuration space of through your custom port to a router. Everything you see here is what you have put, like all this data, your data rate, your parity, your